With the EG method, you make one face on any color like you would with Ortega, not caring if a full layer is made or not. And then there are 3 subsets of algorithms that you have to know in order to solve the rest. If the full layer was solved, you do CLL. If there's one solved bar here, you would do EG1. And if there's no solved bars like we have here, then you would do EG2. Now the thing with EG2 is there are 43 algorithms, but you don't have to learn any new algorithms if you know CLL because you can do anti-CLL. To learn the EG2 algorithms, I'll put a link in the description. This video will just be about anti-CLL. So the idea is that there's a diagonal swap on the bottom, and if you make a diagonal swap on top as well, then you can solve the rest using the Ortega algorithm of R2, F2, R2, or one of the variations of this algorithm, which I'll show later. So in order to do this, you have to know the CLL algorithms and how to recognize CLL cases, because we're going to change the way we recognize CLL cases in order to know which algorithm to do to get anti-CLL. So in this example, how I recognize is from these 3, and you're looking for combinations of opposite or matching colors. So that would be these 2. Orange is not opposite of green, so we ignore this one. Now there are 2 categories of recognition that this could fall into. The first is when 2 out of the 3 are matching or opposite. So if these 2 were red-orange, that would also count as the first category. Category 2 is when all 3 are matching or opposite to each other, and I'll talk about that after this. So for the first category, when there's only 2 matching or opposite, what you do is if they're matching, you pretend it's opposite. And if they're opposite, you pretend it's matching. So in this case, the anti-CLL algorithm that you do is going to be the one that solves this CLL. As you can see, we have 2 oranges here, but here it's orange and red, and that is switching them from the same to being opposite. So the algorithm that you use to solve this case will be what we do here, to get a diagonal swap on top, and then R2, F2, R2. Here's another EG2 case that will solve with anti-CLL, so the bottom here is solved, and we have this, and this that I used to recognize. Now, these 2 are the opposite ones that we're looking at, and we'll ignore this one because it's not opposite of those. Since these 2 are opposite, we're going to pretend that they are the same. So the case that we're going to solve is actually this case where the 2 are the same. So we do the algorithm for that, and then that leaves us with diagonal on top, diagonal on bottom. So a category 2 case would be like this, when all 3 of them are either opposite or matching to each other. So in this case, you can't just switch whether they're opposite or matching, but what you do instead is imagine the only other possible case where they're all opposite or matching, and that's going to be this CLL case. As you can see here, the matching ones are across from each other. Here, the matching ones are next to each other. So these are the only 2 possible cases where all 3 are matching or opposite. So we're going to do this CLL case over here, and then we're left with diagonal, diagonal. Here's another example of category 2 where these 3 are all opposite or matching. So you imagine the other possible all opposite or matching case, which is going to be this one. So these 2 are different cases with all opposite matching. So I would do the CLL algorithm for this one here, and that leaves me with diagonals. Make sure you practice this to get some experience because some cases don't look like it falls into the categories that I talked about, but here all 4 on top are opposite or matching. So you imagine the other case where all 4 on top are opposite or matching. So the rules generally still apply, you just have to extrapolate a little bit if it doesn't look quite like the one you expect. And if you get something like this where it matches this way, then just imagine the case where it's matching in the opposite direction. Alright, next is when you get to the part where you do R2, F2, R2, you can actually do a variant of it so that it can help with finger tricks. So for example, if your hand was down here, then having to do R2, F2, R2 is quite difficult. Instead, you can do R2, B2, R2. And if your hand ended the algorithm up here, then you can do R2, F2, R2. And similarly, if for some reason your left hand was misplaced, then you can do L2, B2, L2, or L2, F2, L2. And then to recognize AUF, or the U move that you do after the R2, F2, R2, or its variant, then you look at the column that is not in the hand that you're using. So if you're using your right hand, then you look at the left column. And here we see it solved, so there's no AUF at the end. In this case, we look at the left column and we see that orange is here and orange is here. So at the end, we need to do U prime to get them on the same side. So we'll do this and then U prime. And in this example, they're all opposite, so then we do U2 at the end. And similarly, if you're using your left hand, you'll look at the block on the right here. Now, putting it all together with the bottom already solved, here is an example of fully going through with anti-CLL very quickly. So here we have this, and so we're going to imagine the other possible opposites pattern because all 3 of them are opposites or matching to each other. So that's going to be if it was like blue, blue, green. So I'm going to do the algorithm for that case, and then right as I'm about to finish the algorithm, here I'm about to do R prime. Instead of doing R prime, I can do R actually to cancel into R2, B2, R2. And then as I do that, I will look right here. I see that blue matches blue, so I'll have to do a U at the end. So I'll cancel into R2, B2, R2, U. And here it is again. So if you haven't already learned CLL and EG1, links are on screen right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.